Hey, Bianca, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. Haven't been a part of the SmackDown brand for a couple of weeks now. How's your experience been so far in the Blue brand?
It's been great. I am super excited about being on Team SmackDown. They say that SmackDown is a land of opportunities, and I feel like that's exactly what's happening with me. I debuted a few weeks ago, and I just qualified as the first. I qualified as the first member for Team SmackDown for Survivor Series. So
Hmm.
I feel like it's showing that I belong here and that I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And I'm super excited for all the possibilities and opportunities that are going to come about on SmackDown with the new locker room that
You mentioned it just there. I mean, you debuted a couple of weeks ago. We see the vignette for your first night on SmackDown. You beat Zelina Vega in your debut 2 weeks ago. You qualified for Team SmackDown a week later. It's all happening so quickly. Do you have a moment to just kind of let it soak in and enjoy everything that's been going on so far?
Yeah, so my husband and I were big believers in celebrating your big and your small accomplishments. So, the night of my debut, I came home and my husband had flowers and balloons, and we celebrated that night. And I did the same thing for him. And then when I qualified for Team SmackDown, we came home and we celebrated. We always celebrate our small and big accomplishments. So
Mhm.
these for me, these were big accomplishments for me. So we definitely celebrated them. And so I always try to stop. In this business, everything happens so fast sometimes, and sometimes you can get a little bit numb to things. But I always try to just keep everything in perspective and know that my life has changed so much,
Mhm.
completely changed so much since I came into WWE. And I always just try to reflect back on how what I was doing before now, and how different it is now, how blessed I am. And I just always try to remember to be thankful
Mhm.
and to be happy and celebrate everything. And I'm excited for whatever's about to come, and I feel like it's all coming so fast. So I am ready. I've been asking for the spotlight to shine, and I'm finally getting that spotlight. So I'm going to take every opportunity and take advantage of it.
Definitely. And with the draft last month, you mentioned you were drafted as SmackDown. It was on night one, and your husband, Montez Ford, wasn't drafted until night two. Now, you did say on Talking Smack that night, if you guys ended up on separate shows, you would make the most of it either way, which is a great mindset to have. Was there a part of you that thought, okay, there might be a chance with him being the Raw Tag Team Champion at the time, that he might actually end up on Raw and you guys might be separated for a little while? Or was it like, it doesn't really matter, what happens either way?
Of course, like we always want to be together. Like, I'm fortunate to be married to someone that I always say that I love to actually be around, and we love being around each other. We live together, we work together, like we're always with each other, and that's how it's always been since NXT. And yeah, it was a little nerve wracking trying to figure out, okay, what's going to happen. I'm on SmackDown. He's the Raw Tag Team Champion. So how is this going to work?
Hmm.
So we talked about it, but we're just so supportive of each other, and we only want the best for each other. And we always, he wouldn't want me to stay on Raw just because he's on Raw, and then there's not as many opportunities for me, and I wouldn't
Hmm.
want him to come to SmackDown if there's not any opportunities for him. So we just agreed, that if he had to stay on Raw in order to be tag team champion, I had to be on SmackDown, and coming to all these new opportunities, and that's just how it is, and that's what we would have to deal with, and we would make it work. We always make it work. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, when he got drafted to SmackDown, we were happy because that's what we wanted.
Yeah. It was only 3 days later, so you only had like 3 days worth of worrying before you found out you were on the same show, which is cool on Monday's Raw. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You've had a great year so far, Bianca. Between being in the Royal Rumble, you competed at Takeover Portland a month after that. You debuted on the main roster at WrestleMania a month later. You were on Raw the next night. You're now on SmackDown. You're going to be at Survivor Series in a couple weeks. You're all over the place in 2020 alone. You've already had a great career up to this point. With that being said, just the great year that you've had so far. You were only on Raw for about 6 months. Do you feel that you had any unfinished business there, whether it be a match with Asuka or a certain thing you wanted to do, or is it just more a matter of kind of making the most of the opportunities you now have on SmackDown?
Yeah, I always try to make the most of any opportunity that's handed to me. But the thing I love about my journey, even from NXT, is that I've been on all three brands in a very short amount of
Mm-hmm.
time. But the thing about my journey that I love, even from NXT, is that with every brand that I've been on, I've always left with having still something to do. If it came down to it and I had to go back to NXT, I still never got the NXT Women's Championship.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have something to do if I go back to NXT. If I go to Raw, I always have something more to accomplish. You know, I always want to have something more that I can do, because that's what keeps me driven and keeps me motivated. So I definitely have, you know, I barely got my foot in the door at Raw, but that just means that I always have something that I can go back to and more things that I can accomplish.
Definitely. And you were a big part of the growth of the NXT women's division for as long as you were there for much of 2018, 2019. Do you miss being part of that environment, the NXT women's division right now? I mean, the women's division in all the shows is strong, obviously, but specifically in NXT, they've had great matches the last couple of weeks. We had Shotzi and Tony this week. They had Io and Candice last week in the TLS match, which was great. The TLC match, which was fantastic. Do you miss being a part of that environment of the, you know, in NXT and the black and blue brand and everything that it has to offer?
Well, NXT, you know, that's where I came to NXT in 2016. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any wrestling experience, so I learned everything from NXT, and I've been bred from NXT, and I formed all these bonds with all the women in the locker room, and we had all these great moments in NXT. We had, you know, I had TakeOver Phoenix. I had TakeOver New York at WrestleMania. I was a part of the first aired episode of the USA Network when NXT went on to USA. I had TakeOver Portland. I was in the first ever Women's War Games match. I was a part of the first NXT Women's Team in Survivor Series that won. So even in Royal Rumble, I was in the ring with my NXT locker room. So of course I have so many ties to NXT, and I loved that locker room. I loved all the girls, and I do miss it, but I'm happy for them because they still doing it right now. They're having all these great matches, like you mentioned, Io and Candice. That match was crazy. You know, you just had Raquel in Rhea, who I'm so happy for Raquel because she's finally getting the spotlight that she deserves. Last night you just had Dakota and Ember, and you know, but I'm not surprised at all because those are the type of matches that the women in NXT they always put on those type of matches. So I do miss it, but I'm excited to be on SmackDown now, and accomplish new things, and now join this locker room with these new girls on SmackDown and get in the ring with them and create magic with them and have these moments with them, because that's what my journey in WWE is about. It's about the moments for me and just, you know, creating even more moments with new girls.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing is you mentioned all the accomplishments you had right there in the last couple of years since joining the company 4 years ago. Even before you made it to Raw and SmackDown this year, you mentioned you were already at Survivor Series last year. We already saw you in the Royal Rumble in January. You know, you've been a part of all these events already, which is super cool. How weird is it to be at Survivor Series this year, representing the brand that you were fighting against last year? I mean, obviously you were part of that big invasion angle on SmackDown about a year ago, which was fantastic. The whole build to Survivor Series last year was so cool. How weird is it to be a part of the other brand now, be a part of the opposing team, representing the blue brand going into Survivor Series this year?
I feel like it's not really weird because I just feel like I am on SmackDown and I am a part of Team Blue, and that's who I am now. Mm-hmm. Like what's in the past is in the past. I fought with NXT last year, and I had to fight SmackDown, but I was a part of NXT. That's in the past, and as great as the past was, you know, I can't live off of the past. I'm moving forward, and I am a part of SmackDown, and this is who I'm fighting for now. You know, it's like I got to do what I got to do. I think it would be more weird if NXT was actually a part of Survivor Series this year, because I will be having to fight against the girls that I won with last year, and I would have to beat them. And I just gotta do what I gotta do. That would be more weird for me. But I believe blue, I'm Team Blue, I'm Team SmackDown, and that's who I'm riding with this year, and we're gonna come out as the best.
I mean, you already got the momentum on your side. You had all those eliminations in the Royal Rumble earlier this year, so it's very likely that we see a repeat of that at Survivor Series. You could very well eliminate all of Raw on your own, so it's very possible that we see that come Survivor Series later on this month. But you started out on Raw earlier this year, as I mentioned before. You actually made your debut at WrestleMania itself. How far in advance did you know about that debut before you made it at WrestleMania 36?
So I knew about debuting with the Street Profits at WrestleMania that morning.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, I knew about the possibility of debuting at Raw after WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, they were going to give me this big, huge debut for, there's no bigger time to debut than WrestleMania or the Raw after WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
That was the plan. And then things kind of got a little crazy with what's been going on. And it kind of went up in the air with, I don't really know what's going to happen. And then I think it was that morning, I believe it was that morning, I got a phone call. I was like, hey, you're needed. Like for WrestleMania? Yes, you're debuting with Street Profits. Like, oh, okay, cool, great.
Uh-huh.
But that's the thing. That's the thing about this business. You always gotta stay ready, so you don't have to get ready, and that's how you get ahead. If you're not ready, then you might miss out on the opportunity. So I was just ready for whatever, and it came about, and I was happy about it because I got to share my very first WrestleMania with my husband.
Yeah. No, it was a cool moment. It's important to know, too, that since you debuted 6, 7, 8 months ago, you have been undefeated in singles competition. You have yet to be pinned in tag team action, singles competition. Could we see the, undefeated catchphrase be brought back from NXT, or is that something kind of exclusive to your NXT days?
Oh, no. I'm just waiting to get on the roll and start winning a few more matches, and that whole undefeated is definitely coming back. I was sad to lose my undefeated streak in NXT, and it's starting over right now on SmackDown, and I'm just waiting for the perfect opportunity to bring it back. So I'm definitely looking forward to bringing back the undefeated.
Perfect. I think people are looking forward to it. I mean, it is, we have seen you win a handful of matches so far on Raw and SmackDown, but in the time that since you've been called up, you've also been on Main Event a lot as well, winning a lot of matches there. So I don't think people realize that you've actually been winning a lot more than you have been on Raw and SmackDown, which is cool. You're on Main Event a little bit before we see you get drafted to SmackDown. Is it one of those things where you're like, okay, I know my time is coming, I'll be patient, whatever? Or is it one of those things where you're like, okay, I just want to be on Raw right now, killing it every opportunity I can get?
No, I always say that I'm the type of person where I focus on the things that I can control, and I do everything that I know that I'm supposed to do, and what's for me will always be for me, and nobody can ever stop that. I'm the type of person where, I have no problem clapping for the people who, when it's their turn, when it's not my turn, because when it's my turn, it's not going to be someone else's turn. So I have to be happy for the people when it's finally their turn, and be happy for them, because one day it's going to be my turn, and I would love for them to be happy for me. So it's a thing of being patient and not being complacent, but just being patient and knowing that what's for you will be for you. All you can do is do what you're supposed to do. And that's what I've been doing since day one. And I'm just excited to be on SmackDown, because I feel like now it's all about to unfold, and everybody's going to be a witness to seeing Bianca Belair finally being in the spotlight.
For sure. When you first get to SmackDown, is it one of those, like, to quote Mean Girls, like a Katie Heron type of vibe where it's like a first day of school type of thing? Or is it like you immediately fit in from day one?
No, I don't feel that way at all. I really love the locker room that we have. It's women empowerment. It's just positivity. We all want the best for each other. At the same time, it's still a competition. We're still competitors, and we're still in-ring performers. But at the end of the day, like I said, like, it's always not going to be everybody. Everybody can't have the spotlight at once. And when it's one person's turn, then you have to clap for them. And then when it's your turn, everybody else is going to clap for you. And the thing is the goal is to always just go out there and be the best, and put on a show, and do the best that you can do. And when you have people pushing you, whether you're comfortable or uncomfortable, that's the goal is always to be the best. And always you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable in order to be the best. And that's what happened. And I feel like in all the lock-ins that I've been a part of, we're just all focused on just going out there and being the best.
And speaking of Mean Girls too, I got to ask, you had the segment earlier this year on NXT with Charlotte and with not Io. Who else was in that segment? It was Charlotte, you, and
Rhea.
Rhea. Okay, so you told Charlotte you don't even go here, and that line completely took off, and it was just fantastic. And yet you got a T-shirt out of it, and you were able to translate it to you're on SmackDown. You're saying now I go here now, which is great. How have you seen that whole thing kind of take off since beginning of this year?
Yeah, that was probably the most fun promo or segment that I've been a part of.
Yep.
It was the first thing that came to my head. It was like, okay, I've been in NXT trying to get this NXT women's title all these years, and here you come. Like you don't even go here. So that was the first thing that came to my head, and it just kind of took off, and everybody loved it, and I just carried it over to Raw, and I carried it over to SmackDown, and I think that it's just a perfect phrase for me to use now that I'm on SmackDown. It's like I go here now. And I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So I got a shirt out of it, a merch shirt out of it when I went to Raw. So now I'm just seeing if I'm going to get one for SmackDown now.
Hopefully. I think it's more a matter of when than if that's going to end up on WWE Shop. We've also seen on SmackDown lately with the vignettes as well, which I think have really, really helped kind of show off a new side to you that a lot of us already knew if you've been watching NXT, but maybe for the newer viewers that may not have known that you're the best, the strongest, the fastest, so on and so forth. How important do you think those vignettes that we've seen from you on Raw and now recently on SmackDown have kind of helped with like the character development type of, that side of things?
I think it helps a lot, coming from NXT. NXT has a fan base, and then Raw and SmackDown, they have a fan base. The way that I looked at it was, yes, a lot of people that watch me in NXT, they know about my athleticism and how I'm the strongest, I'm the fastest, and I'm the smartest and toughest. They know that. But there are some people that may not know exactly who I am or haven't seen me as much as NXT fan base. So it was important for me. I just looked at it as I'm starting all the way over, and I need to reintroduce myself I didn't want to walk into the situation thinking like, okay, yeah, everybody already knows who I am. Mm-hmm. I need to reintroduce myself and to show everyone exactly who I am. And at the time, I wasn't in the ring having matches. So the best way for me to introduce myself to the new crowd and the bigger fan base was through these vignettes and showing things that I necessarily can't show in the ring sometimes. And that's, being the strongest and the fastest and the smartest. And, to me, it's important. In-ring stuff is important, but out of the ring stuff is just as important. And that's like character and your personality, your charisma, and getting that all over to the audience. So that was the whole idea behind the vignettes, is showing that, yes, I can be an in-ring performer. Yes, I can be an athlete, but I'm also entertaining. I also have charisma. There's also other things about the character that you can get out of these vignettes, and it can be entertaining. And that was the idea behind the vignettes that happened on Raw. And then the packaging that started happening on SmackDown was the more serious side of me, and the more athlete and the badass part of Bianca Belair, and it looked like a sports commercial, and it was like more of a sports element to it. And I think that's super important because, like I said, in ring stuff, you can go in there and you can do the moves and you can have a great match, but it's the out of ring stuff is just as important and a huge element and a huge part of being successful in this business and getting your character over to the audience.
100%. And now that you're on SmackDown too, I think it's safe to say a lot of people are excited to see you face Bayley at some point. Definitely Sasha Banks. She eliminated you from Survivor Series last year, so it's got to be a match that we see at some point. Are Banks and Bayley the two opponents that you're most excited to be facing at some point on SmackDown, in addition to anyone else?
Yes, I'm super excited to face Bayley, for one, because Bayley was already kept trolling me on Twitter. So I'm definitely want to fight Bayley. And now Sasha is the SmackDown Women's Champion. So I definitely want to fight Sasha. I want to get in the ring with Sasha. That's a dream match for me. I think it's a dream match for everyone else, the feedback that I've been seeing. So the two people that I definitely want to fight on SmackDown are definitely Sasha and Bayley. You know, they've done so much for the women's division from NXT all the way through. You know, they just had Hell in a Cell where they put on an amazing match. I want to get in the ring with them because, you know, I always say I'm the best, and in order to keep proving that you're the best is to get in the ring with other great competitors. And, you know, Sasha, she calls herself the boss and says she's the best of the best. So I'm trying to get in the ring with her because, you know, you only can push me to my limit and help me be the best as well. Mm-hmm. But other than Sasha and Bayley, I'm also looking forward to, I want to get more in the ring and have matches with Natalya,
mm-hmm. Nice.
With Natty. You know, we just had that triple threat, and we kind of went back and forth in the triple threat a lot, and I came out on top. So I know she's going to come back and come for me because she's probably a little bit upset with me right now because I took the first spot on the Survivor Series team. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to possibly having a feud with Natty as well.
Yeah, she might be upset because she wasn't pinned in that match. You pinned Billie Kay, so she might be upset that she wasn't beaten. So hopefully at some point we could see that match one-on-one. You mentioned you and Sasha being a dream match, which is definitely true. I think I speak for a lot of fans when I say that. I think another dream scenario for a lot of people, including yourself, is you and Naomi as a tag team. I mean, that almost has to happen at some point. I know she's on Raw now. Does that lead at all your list of goals, things you want to accomplish in WWE, is winning the WWE Women's Tag Team titles? Because obviously the SmackDown Women's Championship is the top goal. But for the tag titles, is that a priority of yours? And it's got to be. Is teaming with Naomi just kind of a given at this point?
I think it's something that's definitely going to happen before the end of both of our careers. And I think it's something that has to happen, you know. Like you said, I think it's a given, something that's just, it's going to happen. And when she got drafted to Raw right before I got drafted to SmackDown.
Yep.
And it was a moment when she got drafted to Raw and I was like, oh, is this about to happen? And then I got drafted to SmackDown. So I just think that maybe we're just at two different times in our career right now. I'm just getting my foot in the door, and you know, maybe after I kind of get on the roll and introduce who Bianca Belair is, and then definitely later on down the line, I think it's just something that's just going to naturally happen. Mm-hmm. And when it does happen, it's going to be fun. It's going to be great, and it would be a really, really, really great accomplishment for Naomi and I to be on a tag team and become the tag team champions one day in the future.
Definitely. I think it's inevitable. Final two questions for you, Bianca. Speaking of talent on Raw, do you still feel like you got unfinished business with Charlotte Flair from the kind of like the mini feud that you guys had in NXT at the onset of 2020? And we never got to see a rematch after that. And you guys were on Raw for a little while, but Charlotte took some time off. So is that match still something you want to have? Charlotte still someone you want to have a rematch with at some point?
Definitely. Charlotte, you know, definitely Charlotte and I, we have history from NXT when I was going after Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship, and I finally felt like, okay, this is my time, this is my turn, this is when it's going to happen, and walk Charlotte Flair. And she kind of messed things up for me in NXT, and I had to leave NXT without ever becoming NXT Women's Champion. Mm-hmm. And so, and then she took me out with a chair on my leg. So I definitely have unfinished business with Charlotte. She's gone away for a while. She's on Raw, I'm on SmackDown. But it's kind of something that's inevitable as well. That's going to happen in the near future. We are going to cross paths again, and I am, you know, I got a few things to handle with Charlotte in the near future. So definitely, it's a match that I still want to have in the future with Charlotte.
Definitely. And final question for Bianca. Was there any one person in particular, whether it be an in-ring rival or someone behind the scenes, do you feel really helped contribute the most to your progress as a performer?
I would have to say Sarah Amato, who was my coach in NXT. Mm-hmm. She's taught me everything I know. She taught me how to do a headlock. She taught me how to do a wrist lock. She taught me just everything. And my husband has been such a huge part of my career. You know, he watched wrestling growing up. You know, when I came home, it didn't, like when I left the PC, it didn't stop there. When we came home, we are a couple who, you know, wrestling is such a huge part of our life that it's impossible to turn it off when we get home and say, okay, we're not going to talk about wrestling. That's not who we are. When we get home, we research it, we watch wrestling. He was the person, you know, who was telling me, like, you need to watch this person, watch that person. He was the person that really helped me come up with the idea of the braid and wearing the braid in the ring. And I always go to him like, hey, do you like this gear? Do you like that gear? We really lean on each other for advice. And he's even there for, when I need to vent or when I want to celebrate something. He's just been a huge part of, I feel like, my journey in WWE.
Well, hopefully at some point, if we get a third season of Mixed Match Challenge, that's a pairing that has to happen too. I mean, you and Montez Ford that's a given, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's
That's definitely a given.
Looking forward to it. Bianca, it's so great to see you on SmackDown now. Best of luck at Survivor Series. Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.